Hey, deserving listeners, the curious case of Natalia Grace. Let's watch.
Westfield 911, what's your emergency?
I'm stalking one of my neighbors. I want to hurt them. I'm afraid of what might happen if someone doesn't help me.
I'm going to send some help.
While living at the Union Street apartments, Natalia calls the police on herself.
Wow. Okay. So the Occam's razor explanation is that she actually does have a compulsion to harm and either has remorse about it or just doesn't want to get in trouble for it and has to call the police on herself to avoid taking action against one of her neighbors. They've been interviewing neighbors, a few of them, and they all say that she was annoying and a pest and invasive and clingy. And some of the neighbors were saying that she was scary. They didn't give any concrete reasons to be afraid of her. So it's hard to know if that's some sort of bias or stereotype, or maybe they were primed to worry about her because of things that they had known from other people. I don't know, because they didn't really give any huge reason other than that one of the neighbors came home and found that Natalia was in her house rifling through the fridge. The whole time that the neighbors are describing Natalia, what I was thinking was that Natalia she's like a puppy dog that is desperate for attention. People who are neglected will sometimes develop what we call an attachment disorder. It's not super related to attachment in the way that I often talk about it with preoccupation and dismissive and that kind of thing. It's related, but it's not the same thing. And in the DSM, which is right here, we have a couple of constructs related to attachment for children. And one of them is the observation that you'll have a child that will indiscriminately bond with anybody. They don't zero in on one person. Even if that person has been identified as a stable attachment figure, they will bond with strangers, with new people, and they will be very solicitous in trying to bond and trying to connect. And it can be very sweet, but it can also be very risky because you have a child that is willing to just go off with anybody. Also, it can be off-putting to people because people typically aren't used to that. We have boundaries. It's like, well, you have your family and we're your neighbor. I'm not your mom. Why are you in my house? And other neighbors were saying as soon as we get, or when we would leave to go to a soccer game for one of our kids, Natalia would call us and text us and call us and text us. And as soon as we got home, she would rush over to a house and she'd be just completely ignoring the fact that we are trying to decompress from our trip. And so when I hear that description, I just hear of an extremely lonely person who might not have the same sense of boundaries and not the same sense of how to build a relationship because it's never been shown to her. So we're hearing that, and then she calls 911 saying that she's worried she's going to hurt, kill. She's saying she's stalking one of her neighbors. I don't know. Given the allegation that she is lying a lot, which we can't know for sure, but if we go with that, then it's hard to believe anything she says. She could be lying. She could be coerced into making this call. I don't know. Maybe we'll get some detail.
She'd been stalking a neighbor, and she had thoughts of wanting to harm others.
What's your name?
Natalia Barnett.
I'm aware that Natalia contacted 911 a couple of times while she was living in that apartment.
Okay, according to, I believe, the police report, I don't know, we're not being told what this copy is, but stated that she is stalking several neighbors across the street. She says she wants to hurt them and is afraid of what might happen. Okay, so not just one neighbor, but several.
And told the officers that she was attempting to burn.
When the mother arrived, Christine, daughter was trying to burn things. Nothing is on fire. She believes daughter is in a destructive phase and may want to hurt self and or others. Yeah, I mean, it is possible. There are cases that I've worked with in which people will have the set of behaviors, symptoms, if you will, in which they are fascinated with fire. They have a semi-obsession with harming other people and getting back at other people. They can be very cold, unemotional, psychopathic, lack of remorse. But it's interesting that she would call 911. So that's interesting.
And she goes, oh, they're afraid of me. I said, why? She says, because I took a knife to them one night, and she just had this strange look in her eye like it's a normal thing.
All right, so again, corroborating evidence. We have a neighbor who seems credible, who doesn't have a vested interest in lying, seemingly, who is saying that Natalia admitted to the neighbor that she did threaten the parents with a knife. Now, Natalia could have been lying in that moment. I don't know. You just feel bad if that's true. You feel bad.
It wasn't until she started talking to me more in depth about the history with her family. And she said, well, I tried to kill my mom. And I just was asking her more questions like, well, what happened?
All right. Another corroborating witness saying that Natalia admitted to her that she tried to kill her mom.
Well, what happened? How did you try to do that?
I stood over them with a knife, so they took all the knives away. And then I tried to poison them, so I had to live in the garage for a while.
All right, so we're hearing from a third person, and we're hearing about those incidents that Michael talked about. And we're also learning that she had to live in the garage for a while. Okay, it's upsetting.
And he said she got to hanging around too close to their chairs, and rubbing up, leaning on them and stuff. It made my grandson feel uncomfortable, so he told Natalia, get out of here, and slammed the door in her face.
Okay, so the neighbors are saying that she seemingly was very interested in the young boys and not the girls in the neighborhood. And now we're hearing from one of the neighbors saying that, according to her, she heard a story from her grandson that we just heard. So what does that mean?
And then we have a landscaping crew, and she would hide behind the bushes and kind of pop out at them, and it would scare them.
Okay, another neighbor is claiming that she would hide the bushes and jump out at the landscaping crew. We're not hearing from the landscaping crew, so who knows. But if we go with the psychopathy hypothesis, the sadistic hypothesis, yeah, you could, as someone who likes to screw with people, and I've treated people like this, I'm reminded of some situations. It's not pleasant, obviously. If we go with that hypothesis, then maybe that's what was going on. The other angle, which also could be coinciding with the sadistic psychopath pleasure of it, is that she's lonely and she's never had anyone pay attention to her. And she can kind of get two birds with one stone. She can have the power and the pleasure of scaring others and invading their space, but also she gets to be in other people's space because she's never allowed that. She was constantly being abandoned by, at least what we know of, what we heard of, were 3 families in Ukraine and the orphanage. Even though the orphanage wasn't a permanent place, a young child wouldn't know that. And then there's the family in New Hampshire. She went to stay with that other family in Indiana. The Austin family never took her in. And then we have this family, Michael and Christine. She's been abandoned by them. There's a lot of loneliness. And the neighbors keep talking about how she was really weird and awkward and off-putting and bothersome. And that could be a product of the sadistic psychopathy. It could also be a product of the fact that she's just so desperate. If it's one thing to turn people off, whether it's friends or dating, is desperateness, right? And also lack of practice. There's not been a venue in which she could learn how to socialize because she might not have ever had that. So, I don't know. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's a new year, so of course it's time for New Year's resolutions. But often, those are just manifestations of internalized harmful voices that tell us we're not good enough. So instead of making a resolution to change something, let's recognize that we are already good enough. Now, most people think of therapy as a place for us to work on our problems, but there are several schools of thought within the field of psychotherapy that adamantly reject that paradigm, like narrative therapy and solution-focused. Instead, these clinicians help us focus on what we're already doing well. And by helping us do that, data shows that we often will gravitate towards more beneficial patterns. Well, one place you can find such therapists is on BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
She seemed to hang around all the older, real old guys a lot. And she was trying sexual and talking sexual things to him. Fred was in there doing his laundry.
Okay, so according to one of the neighbors, she has heard that older men in the neighborhood had told her, the neighbor, that she would proposition them sexually. We heard this from the staff at the mental health hospital. So it could be the sadistic psychopathy and the pleasure of gaining power over others, making other people uncomfortable, maybe even getting sexually turned on by that. It also could be an effort to connect with other people. It also could be a cry for help. It also could be an effort to recreate something in her past. Maybe something happened when she was a young child, maybe with Michael. Let's hope not.
Down a hill, they were laying, Natalia and him were laying, rolling back and forth.
And then the next thing I know, she was close to the little boy. And Natalia reached over
and started undoing his pants. And I said, Natalia, what are you doing?
My God. This is treatable with a specialist. There are specialists who work with people who have this sort of compulsion, and they are able to reform them. Some people are not easily reformed, or seemingly it's impossible to help them. But there are plenty of cases that I have personally seen, and lots of research demonstrating that people who have a compulsion or a history of perpetrating sexual predation on children or others can be reformed. They can be changed.
He said, if you ever touch my son again, he was just the dad enraged.
and she took off and went up front.
Doing that with that little boy in front of us? God knows what she does.
That is the pattern, that by the time you've seen it, the perpetrator has become emboldened by successes in the past.
My middle son and my youngest son, I've not seen them in over 8 years. And they want nothing to do with seeing me. We all were abused in that household. And Christine was the purveyor of abuse.
Okay, so this episode, the 4th episode, and they're also saying that this is season 1, so I'm guessing that they're predicting there'll be more developments to the story. I don't know. But in this 4th episode, it's just a lot of hearsay, and it seems like fluff. It seems like reality TV, this episode. They found a police officer that would say the right things. They have a lot of speculations being said, and I don't really know what to say about that. So I wasn't reacting to it on this channel. So I thought I'd catch you up. And where we're at now is almost present day. And they got a divorce, Christine and Michael, and it was not amicable, as he says. And he's saying that he hasn't had contact with his 2 younger sons. He lives with the oldest son. So I don't know what that means. Does that mean that Michael is a horrible person and the boys are reasonably drawing a boundary? Or is Christine the way that Michael is depicting her, as this master manipulator and abusive person, and has manipulated the 2 boys? We can't really take the dad's account at face value. If he has some data, if we have corroborating evidence, then we can start to piece together a story. But, a dad that is upset at his ex-wife and claiming that she's an abusive person, that's not very, compelling. Could be true. Could be true. We don't know. There's just a lack of data. This episode seems to really be trying to paint a picture, and I'm resisting the pull of the manipulation that they're putting. I'm looking for data. I'm trying to see past. It's like with reality TV. I can't take what is being edited and presented to us at face value. I'm looking for the truth, so to speak, and there's just not a lot to go off of in this episode. But the facts are, if I'm looking at my notes, is that the dad was charged, and I think the mom was too, with 2 counts of child neglect. They moved across the state, I believe, to Lafayette, Indiana. And then Natalia connected with someone in Lafayette called Cynthia Mann. And there's a couple, the Mann couple, the Manns, Cynthia and someone else. They really connected with Natalia. And then there was an interview later on, 5 years later, and Cynthia Mann was interviewed and said that she still was very connected to Natalia, and Natalia had been living with them for 5 years, which I just give a big thumbs up to, because that actually might be just the thing that Natalia needs, is maybe Natalia had reached a certain level of maturity, or maybe the Mann couple, it sounds so weird to say that, but Cynthia Mann and her partner, maybe they just have what it takes to adjust and handle Natalia, sort of roll with the punches and help her to feel safe enough so that Natalia doesn't have to act out in those ways.
Natalia, look at me. Look at me. Natalia, how long have you been on this wall? 2 minutes. Okay, so it's hurting you that bad in 2 minutes? All right, well, you still need to be on your wall.
Okay, I don't know what I'm seeing right here, at least the way they're playing it, which could be an accurate depiction, is that this is Christine being draconian and abusive to Natalia.
That girl stands there, nose in the wall, from 10 a.m. to noon. Christine makes everybody lunch, gets Natalia's food, puts it right next to her. You can eat this. When, boys and girls? When you sit your ass at the table and you write down the names of every person you've lived with and you tell me who you really are.
Okay, so we've heard from the son, who might be in alignment with the father because he lives with him, and might be lying to not get in trouble with the dad. Who knows? But we are hearing from 2 family members that the mom, Christine, was seemingly very focused on this line of questioning, which I've already talked about before. And it was some kind of fixation that the mom had, or some kind of power play or anxiety that the mom had. And we're hearing an account from the father, who has gone through, according to his words, a very difficult divorce, and they still are at odds with each other. And according to him, he's saying that the mom would frequently grill Natalia regarding her history, and that Natalia would have to sit against the wall for hours and would not be allowed to eat. Do we believe this account, this story? I don't know. Could be that there seems to, we have evidence. There's the video of, we don't know how long those things are happening, but it does add some corroboration to his account here. I will say, as he seemingly might be exaggerating Christine's behavior, who knows? He might not be exaggerating, but I think it would be easy, at least at this point, to have that question mark. Then you start wondering, well, was he exaggerating about Natalia too? Is he always making himself out to be the victim?
When I got home, Christine says that, yeah, she's been standing still, nose on the wall, for 8 hours. And she ain't getting out of there until she writes down names. Michael, don't you say a word to her. Don't you help her.
Well, so who knows? But if this is true, or he close to the truth, wow. Awful. Just awful.
Yeah. So, at this point in time, it's been 8 hours. Natalia soiled herself. Natalia, according to Christine, soiled herself hours ago.
Okay, so he's not helping himself, because if he didn't go to the authorities with this information, he's implicated in this. He stood by. I guess he could make the case that he was terrified of Christine, but that's going to be a hard sell. Why would he say this? He was the dad. He was half of the parental system. At the very least, why didn't you tell someone? And maybe he did, but it doesn't sound like it.
Tell police officers this? I can do this. There were multiple times, 3 that I bore witness to, and I'm certain far more than that Christine beat the holy hell out of her. So one day I come home from work.
Wow. Who knows if it's accurate, but if it is, just awful. Just awful. Now, he's in the middle of telling us the story, but it is almost 1 a.m, and I need to go to bed. So it seems weird to stop here. I've been really gripped by this documentary. I can see why people would watch this. So tune in next time when I watch what he's about to say with the rest of the sentence. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's horrible. This is just horrible. It's horrible all the way. It's just tragic. It's just tragedy. It's just tragedy after tragedy for potentially everybody. Just awful. Just awful. Just so sad. Well, everyone, please thank your lucky stars. You're hopefully not in a situation like that, and take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.